At my sister's birthday dinner, I found my name scribbled on a napkin at the kids' table. My mom smirked. We thought it would be more fitting. I just walked over, retrieved the designer purse I'd bought her, and said, "Consider this ungifted." Then I left. 20 minutes later, she was calling me from the parking lot, furious, but By the time I walked into that restaurant, it was already too much of a mockery. Not just because of whatever joke they thought they were playing that night, but because of everything leading up to it, years of me being the quiet financial safety net for my sister Melissa and her husband, Kevin. It had become routine. The text messages that always started with "Hey, sorry to bother you." The late night calls when they were just a little short for rent. The quiet assumption that I'd pick up the bill whenever we went out, because things were tight on their end. They'd talk about all the big plans they had, opening a boutique, starting a podcast, flipping houses, but none of them ever got past the idea stage. And me? I just kept paying. Every time. Not because I was rich, far from it, but because I thought families should have each other's backs. Melissa was my younger sister, and I wanted her to succeed, even if Kevin seemed more interested in playing video games than finding steady work. I told myself I didn't mind. That it wasn't about whether they deserved it, but about doing the right thing. So when her 27th birthday came around, I decided to go all out. I bought her a $2,200 designer handbag, the exact one she'd been obsessing over for months. I'd heard her talk about it at least 10 different times, running her hand along the picture in the catalog like it was some kind of holy relic. She'd never spend that kind of money on herself, and honestly, either would I. But I did it anyway. I wanted her to feel special. Appreciated. I walked into the restaurant with that gift in my hand, imagining the look on her face when she saw it. But instead, I was greeted with something else entirely. The big family table was already full. My dad was deep in conversation with Kevin. My sister's friends were laughing loudly over wine. And my mother, sitting at the head like she owned the place, had that smirk I've come to dread. It's the same one she wears when she's about to say something she thinks is clever, usually at someone else's expense. I scanned the table for my place card. Nothing next to Melissa. Nothing near my dad. I looked around, confused, until I saw it, tucked away in the far corner of the room at a small, wobbly side table. 2 booster seats, a few crayons rolling around, and in the center, a folded napkin with my name scribbled across it in thick black marker. I stood there for a second, wondering if I was seeing it right. My mom followed my gaze and said, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear, "We thought it would be more fitting for you." The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. I could feel it. That slow, crawling heat up the back of my neck. It wasn't just the insult. It was the fact that this was coming from the same people I'd been bailing out for years, the same sister whose birthday I was here to celebrate with a gift worth more than the rent I'd paid for her last spring. I didn't say a word. I just walked straight to the main table, set the heavy gift bag in front of Melissa, and let it sit there for a second. Her hand was already reaching for it when I picked it back up. "Consider this ungifted," I said, and headed for the door. I didn't look back. But I could feel every single pair of eyes in that room on me as I walked out. I was already 3 blocks from the restaurant when my phone started buzzing. Melissa's name lit up the screen, the photo of us from some family barbecue years ago staring back at me. For half a second, I thought about ignoring it, but old habits are hard to break. I'd always answered her calls, even when they came at 2 a.m. with another, urgent, problem that somehow ended with me opening my banking app. I swiped to answer, and before I could get a word out, her voice exploded through the speaker. "What the hell was that? You humiliated me in front of everyone. You couldn't have just taken the joke? You had to make it about yourself on my birthday?" She wasn't crying. Melissa never cried when she was angry, she just sharpened her voice like a blade. She listed every perceived offense I'd committed in the last 20 minutes, weaving them together like I'd staged some elaborate sabotage. She kept circling back to the same line, "You embarrass me." When she finally paused to breathe, I said, "That's for not valuing the one who's always been there for you." I kept it flat calm. I wasn't going to get sucked into matching her volume. That's when she laughed, not the kind that says I get it now, but the kind that says you're ridiculous. She said it was just a joke, that Mom thought it would be funny, that I'd taken it way too seriously. But I wasn't stupid. I knew exactly what that seating arrangement had been, a public way to remind me where I stood. Not as a brother worth respect, but as a walking wallet who could be the punchline when it suited them. Before I could say anything, I heard my mother's voice in the background, sharp and commanding, telling Melissa to give her the phone. A second later, Mom was in my ear. "What is wrong with you?" she said. "You caused a scene over nothing. You walked out like a spoiled child. And you think that's okay?" "It's not nothing," I said. "It's years of me paying your bills, covering for Melissa, helping Kevin, and all I get in return is being treated like I don't belong at my own sister's birthday dinner. You're acting like money makes you better than us," she snapped. "No," I said. "I'm saying I've been keeping this family from falling apart financially for years, and tonight just made it clear how little that matters to you." There was a pause. Then she told me I was being dramatic. That family jokes were part of what made us close. That I was throwing everything away over a seating card. Melissa grabbed the phone back. Her voice was quieter now, but not softer. "If you don't turn around and come back right now, don't bother talking to me again." "Okay," I said and hung up. I pulled into a closed gas station, killed the engine, and sat there in the dark. My phone kept lighting up with notifications, texts from Mom, a couple from my aunt, all saying versions of the same thing. "Come back, fix this, don't make it worse." But for once, I didn't feel like fixing it. I didn't feel like apologizing for not laughing at my own humiliation. I felt done. By the next morning, my phone was a war zone. Missed calls stacked in double digits, unread texts pouring in every few minutes. The first wave came from my mom, alternating between guilt trips and sharp jabs. One text read, "You embarrass your sister in front of everyone. Do you feel proud?" 2 minutes later another, "You need to fix this before the family thinks you've lost it." Then came the rest of them. My Aunt Linda, who's never shy about telling me how practical I am, wrote a long paragraph about how she didn't understand where all this anger was coming from, and how one bad seating arrangement shouldn't destroy a relationship. My cousin Paul chimed in, claiming he'd heard I stormed out like a kid over a harmless joke. Of course, neither of them had been there. That's when it hit me. My mom had clearly been busy last night. She'd spun her own version of events before I'd even made it home, one where I wasn't the guy bringing a $2,200 gift after years of quietly paying my sister and her husband's bills. In her story, I was the unstable one, too sensitive to laugh along, who decided to ruin the night. I didn't answer any of them. Not yet. I made coffee, sat on my couch, and just watched the screen light up. The group chat for my mom's side of the family was blowing up so fast I had to mute it. Every message carried the same undercurrent. I was wrong, I'd hurt Melissa, and I needed to make it right. Around mid-morning, my dad's name appeared. He almost never texted unless it was important. His message was short, "Your mom's upset. You should just apologize and move on." Move on. Like this was just a momentary overreaction, not the latest in a years-long pattern where I played the role of safety net, ATM, and occasional punching bag. In my dad's world, keeping peace with Mom was worth more than addressing the truth. Then Melissa finally decided to speak for herself. I thought maybe she'd be ready to talk like adults, but instead she sent a wall of text that made my jaw tighten. She listed all the times I'd made her feel small, pointing out when she'd asked for money yet again, suggesting Kevin pick up a second job, even reminding her about bills she'd promised to cover but didn't. In her mind, that wasn't me being honest. That was me looking down on her. It was surreal. Every example she gave was tied to me stepping in to help, but she'd reframed it as if I'd been trying to humiliate her all along. And the more I read, the more it sank in. This wasn't about the napkin. It wasn't even about her birthday. This was about the fact that the moment I stopped playing my assigned role, the reliable fixer who never complained, I became the villain. They weren't mad because I'd left. They were mad because I'd shown them I could leave. For the first time, I started thinking about what it might look like if I didn't go back at all. By the afternoon, I'd made up my mind. No more debating with them, no more trying to explain my side, so they could twist it into something else. I'd been their dependable problem solver for years, and all it had ever earned me was the expectation that I'd show up, shut up, and pay up. I muted every family group chat, turned my phone face down, and pulled out my laptop. I had an old spreadsheet buried in my files, one I'd started a few years ago to keep track of all the temporary help I'd given Melissa and Kevin. I'd stop adding to it at some point, because honestly, Looking at the numbers just made me feel like a fool. But that night, I decided to finish it. 2 hours later, I sat back in my chair, staring at the total. Even without counting the little things, the nights I covered dinner without saying anything, the surprise utility payments to stop their power from getting shut off, the number was higher than I wanted to admit. It wasn't generosity at that point. It was sponsorship. And I'd been funding a lifestyle they had no intention of changing. That realization was what finally gave me the clarity I'd been missing. I typed out one message in the main family chat, taking a break from the family for a while. Please don't contact me unless it's a real emergency. No long explanations. No anger. Just a line in the sand. I turned my phone off completely and went to bed thinking that would be the end of it, or at least the start of them leaving me alone. The next morning proved me wrong. I got into work like any other day, coffee in hand, already mentally running through the day's schedule, when my manager called me into her office. She shut the door behind me, which she almost never does, and turned her computer screen toward me. An email was open. No name attached, just a generic Gmail address, but the tone was instantly familiar. The email claimed I'd been displaying erratic behavior in public, that I'd stormed out of a family dinner in a fit of rage, and that, for everyone's safety, my workplace might want to keep an eye on me. It read like something ripped from a bad HR manual. My stomach dropped. There was no signature, but I didn't need one. I knew exactly who had written it. The phrasing, the little digs masked as concern. The careful way it painted me as unstable without directly accusing me. It was my mother's voice on the screen. I told my manager there had been a personal family issue, that it wouldn't affect my work, and that the email wasn't based in reality. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded, saying she believed me but wanted me to be aware of how perception can spread. I walked out of that office with my coffee now cold, my hands shaking, not from fear, but from a kind of anger I hadn't felt before. This wasn't just about my sister's birthday anymore. This was my mother deliberately trying to smear me in the one place I had always kept separate from the chaos of my family. That night, I didn't just mute the chats. I blocked every single one of them: Melissa, Kevin, Mom, Dad, the aunts and cousins. I even deleted the family group entirely from my phone. But even as I sat there in the quiet, I knew it wouldn't be over. My mother didn't let things go. She escalated. And something told me she wasn't done yet. 3 days went by without a single message making it through. Blocking them had been the first genuinely peaceful choice I'd made in years. My phone stayed quiet, my evenings were mine, and I didn't wake up to new demands disguised as just checking in. But I knew the quiet wouldn't last. With my mother, silence didn't mean surrender. Silence meant she was sharpening her tools. On the 4th morning, the knock came. It was just after 9, a cold Saturday, the kind of day I usually spent catching up on small chores and avoiding the world. I just poured the coffee grounds into the filter when there was a pounding at my front door, sharp, deliberate, and far too loud for the hour. It wasn't the kind of knock you give when you're visiting. It was the kind you use when you want everyone in the building to know you're there. I froze for a moment, listening. 3 more hard knocks, then a pause. I stepped quietly to the peephole, and there she was. My mother, hair done, coat perfectly buttoned, clutching a large manila folder under her arm like it contained a court summons. Standing slightly behind her, leaning on my porch railing, was Kevin, my sister's husband, scrolling lazily on his phone like this was just another Saturday errand. I didn't open the door. Instead, I called through it. "What do you want?" Her voice was too bright, too smooth. She said she'd come to talk like adults, and end this nonsense before it goes any further. I told her I'd already said everything I needed to, that I didn't want to talk. That's when her tone snapped into something colder. She said she'd been in touch with people who deserved to know the truth about me, and that she could make things very difficult for me if I didn't drop this attitude. I told her to leave. She didn't. Instead, she bent down and slid the manila folder under my door. When I picked it up and opened it, my stomach turned. Inside were printed screenshots of old text conversations between me and Melissa, cherry-picked so it looked like I was controlling with my money, asking about when she'd pay me back, telling her she needed to get things together, mentioning that Kevin should work more hours. No context, no record of the time she begged me to cover bills or called me at midnight saying they were about to lose everything. Just selective lines designed to make me look like the bad guy. I realized instantly what she was doing. She wasn't trying to make peace. She was trying to rewrite the history. And if she had copies of these texts printed, that meant she was already sharing them. I slid the folder back under the door without a word. Kevin chuckled outside, low and mocking. My mother told me I was throwing away the only people who care about you, and that one day I'd regret it. They stayed another minute, knocking once more before finally walking back to their car. I stood at my window and watched them leave. My mother didn't look angry. She looked satisfied, like she thought she just planted a seed of doubt in me that would eventually pull me back into their orbit. But she was wrong. If anything, seeing her escalate like that, dragging my personal life into something calculated and malicious, just made it clear that there was nothing left to salvage. They wanted me back in my place. I was done playing it. After the stunt with the folder, something in me clicked into place. I stopped telling myself this was a temporary break, or cooling off period. That kind of thinking only leaves the door cracked open. And my family knows how to pry open any door left even slightly ajar. This wasn't a pause. This was a cutoff. The next morning, I made a list, every possible way they could still reach me, every connection that tied me to them. It was longer than I expected. Old group chats, forgotten email threads, even a shared streaming account I'd been paying for without realizing it. First, the phone. I changed my number, a step I'd always resisted because it felt too final. But the relief I felt afterward was immediate, like I'd just taken the batteries out of a smoke alarm that had been going off for years. Then I went through my email accounts and set up filters to automatically delete anything from their addresses. Social media got wiped next, unfollowed, blocked, profile settings tightened until I was basically invisible to anyone who wasn't already in my trusted circle. Then came the financial side. I closed the joint account I'd opened years ago to make it easier to send Melissa money when she was in trouble. I went through my online banking and canceled every single autopayment connected to them, small things I'd almost forgotten about, like Kevin's monthly cloud storage bill that had been coming out of my account since 2019. By that afternoon, I realized I'd done something I hadn't done in years. I'd made my life mine again. Still, I knew that wasn't enough. My mother had already crossed into my professional life once, and if she decided to go further, it could get ugly. So I placed a fraud alert on my credit, set up identity monitoring, and even spoke to a lawyer about the possibility of a harassment restraining order. The lawyer didn't think I'd need it yet, but told me to start a file and document everything. So I did. A few days later, I heard from my cousin Ava, one of the very few who hadn't picked a side. She told me my mom was telling everyone I'd abandoned the family over a seeding joke, and that I'd cut them off financially out of spite. Ava asked if I wanted her to correct the story. I told her not to bother. The truth didn't need defending to people who'd already decided not to see it. Exactly a week after their visit, a letter showed up in my mailbox. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. My mother's. The envelope was thick, almost stuffed. I didn't open it. I put it in a drawer with the other reminders of this whole mess still sealed. Whatever it said, an apology, a threat, or another performance, I didn't need to read it to know the goal was the same: pull me back in. The silence since then has been total. No knocks on my door, no sudden, concerned emails to my boss, no block number calls in the middle of the night. It would be easy to believe that meant it was over. But I've known my family my whole life. Silence isn't peace. Silence is planning. I don't know when they'll try something next, but I know they will. And this time, I won't just react. I'll be ready. And when it happens, there will be more to tell. The big update. It's been a little over a month since I shut the door on my family for good. The first week felt strange, like my phone was holding its breath. No group chats lighting up, no. Just checking in. Texts that somehow always turned into money requests. No voicemails from my mom laced with guilt trips. For the first time in years, I had real quiet. The second week, I started to notice the changes in myself. I wasn't checking my phone every few minutes like I used to. I wasn't bracing myself every time I saw a family member's name pop up. My evenings were my own. I could spend money on myself without feeling like I was betraying someone else's emergency. But I also knew it wouldn't last forever. My family doesn't do silence. Silence, to them, is just the planning phase. The break ended on a Tuesday evening. I was walking home from work, already picturing the dinner I was going to make, when I spotted a dark SUV idling across the street from my building. I almost didn't give it a second look. People park there all the time. But as I got closer, the driver's window rolled down. It was Kevin. He grinned like we were just two friends catching up, not a man who had sat outside my house for God knows how long. "Hey, Alex. Thought I'd catch you before you went inside." I told him I wasn't interested in talking. That's when he leaned forward slightly and said, "Melissa's pregnant." I just stood there, my grocery bag in one hand, not sure what reaction he was expecting. He launched right into it, telling me Melissa didn't want the baby growing up without knowing their uncle. That it was time to let go of the past. That families should be there for each other no matter what. And then he said the line that told me exactly why he was there. "She thought maybe you'd want to help get things ready. You know, like you've always been there for us before." I could almost hear my mom's voice in that sentence. I told him congratulations, but nothing had changed. He tried to smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Before I could walk away, he added, "You don't want this kid to grow up thinking you're the kind of man who turns his back on family, do you?" I didn't answer. I just walked past him and into my building. The next day, I got a text from my cousin Ava, the first message from a family member since I'd cut contact. She said she'd overheard my mom telling someone at a baby shower that I was already planning to set up a college fund for the child. My name had never come up in the same breath as congratulations, only college fund. I don't know if Melissa actually believes I'll get pulled back in because of a baby, or if this is just the new hook they're hoping to use on me. But I do know one thing: a month of silence was never going to be the end. This was just the opening move. And something tells me the next one is coming sooner than I think. I don't know if Melissa actually believes I'll get pulled back in because of a baby, or if this is just the new hook they're hoping to use on me. But I do know one thing: a month of silence was never going to be the end. This was just the opening move. And something tells me the next one is coming sooner than I think. Because if there's one thing my family is consistent about, it's that they don't just push boundaries, they bulldoze them. And now that I've stopped letting them in through the front door, I have a feeling they're already looking for a window.